Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift in the world of developmental programs and participant-directed services. We are digging into a highly significant piece of operational guidance from the Office of Developmental Programs. And trust me, this isn't just your standard routine paperwork.
Looking at this official seal, you know this comes straight from the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. So, yeah, it carries absolute, authoritative weight. And the timeline we're dealing with is super urgent. This document is literally going to impact how you manage care, how your hours are logged, and ultimately, what you have to sign to keep your services active.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Dunkelberger court decision, look at the new required service agreements, detail the updated travel and hour limits, walk through the consequences of missing deadlines, and finally, explore the life-sharing alternative.
All right, moving right along to Section 1, the Dunkelberger court decision. This is the Commonwealth Court case from February of 2026 that basically triggered this entire shift. Now, what's really interesting about this is the contrast between the court's ruling and ODP's core beliefs. The court actually struck down ODP's limitations, like the caps on a relative's hours, because of an improper regulatory process. They basically hit the nail on the head that the department just didn't use the right rulemaking channels. However, ODP maintains that these limits are absolutely vital for health and safety. So the decision was really about the process, not the validity of the rules themselves. Because of that, ODP is now taking new steps to enforce them.
And that brings us right into Section 2, new required service agreements. So because the old manual regulations got struck down, ODP has to enforce these limits through legally binding contracts. Depending on your specific model, you're going to need one of two updated forms. If you're using a vendor fiscal model, you'll use the Common Law Employer or CLE consent form. If you're on the Agency with Choice model, you'll need the Managing Employer or ME agreement form. And make no mistake, signing these legally locks you into ODP's limits.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is the deadline. August 6th, 2026. This is strict and it is completely non-negotiable. Any old agreements you might have signed prior to May 8th, they become completely invalid on this day. If you want to keep your participant-directed services running, getting these updated agreements submitted by August 6th is an absolute must. So what exactly are you agreeing to? Let's chunk that out in Section 3, updated travel and hour limits.
First up is the number 40. These updated agreements firmly cap the maximum hours at 40 per week for any single relative, legal guardian, or legally responsible person providing services, which means it's now squarely on your shoulders as the employer to manage those work schedules and make sure no single relative works more than those 40 hours.
Next up is 60. Even if you have multiple relatives providing care, the absolute maximum combined limit is 60 hours per week. This covers authorized in-home and community support, companion services, or any combination of the two. Simply put, you literally cannot exceed 60 hours of paid care provided by relatives in a single week.
Now I know what you're probably thinking. What if there's an emergency? Well, that's where the number 13 comes into play. Exceeding those hour limits is only allowed for truly unforeseen circumstances. Think sudden illness, severe weather, or maybe the unexpected resignation of a staff member. But listen, even then, this exception is strictly capped. You can only exceed the limits for a maximum of 13 weeks per fiscal year.
These new agreements also crack down on travel. All waiver services must occur within Pennsylvania or a contiguous bordering state. We're talking places like New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, West Virginia, or Ohio. ODP requires this so they can effectively monitor health and welfare. So if you're taking a trip down to Florida or California, for example, you cannot use waiver-funded services there. You'll have to use private funds.
All right, moving to Section 4, consequences of missing deadlines. Let's look at the strict ultimatum ODP has handed down.
If you happen to miss that August 6th deadline, things are going to escalate rapidly. First, a notice of non-compliance gives you just 7 calendar days to return the form. Miss that, and you get a 30-day warning before your payroll processing is completely halted. If you miss that one, you get one final 30-day window. And after that, your payroll is suspended and you face involuntary termination from the program.
I really want to pause here and highlight a specific quote directly from the ODP guidance. The involuntary termination of a CLE or ME is not subject to appeal. Guys, this is an irreversible reality. Failing to comply means permanently losing the ability to self-direct your services. You would then have just 30 days to transition over to a traditional provider-managed service model. To avoid this nightmare scenario, ISP teams need to be highly proactive right now.
If your current setup relies on relatives for more than 60 hours, you cannot just sit back and hope for an exception. You've got to start discussing alternatives immediately, whether that means hiring non-relative staff, modifying your schedules to fit within the caps, or making a partial or even full transition to traditional provider-managed models.
Now, if you really can't make those caps work, there is a pivot available. Section 5, the life-sharing alternative.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference. Participant-directed services lock you into highly rigid 15-minute billing units. Life-sharing, on the other hand, is paid on a flexible per diem basis. It's a residential model centered around sharing everyday life in a natural home environment. Plus, and this is huge, under life-sharing, there is absolutely no cap on the hours provided by relatives.
So, why is the state pushing families who need extensive hours toward life-sharing? Honestly, because those 15-minute billing units are just exhausting. When a relative bills Medicaid for a 15-minute unit, every single second of that time must be dedicated solely to the individual. During that billed time, the caregiver absolutely cannot run errands for others, they can't do the family laundry, they can't prep lunch for anyone else in the home, they can't even sleep. Moving to a per diem life-sharing model provides a stipend that lets care happen naturally, without micromanaging your entire life in 15-minute increments. Plus, it introduces professional support and some much-needed respite care options.
Well, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from that initial court ruling to the critical new caps on your hours and travel, and of course the irreversible consequences of ignoring this new paperwork. So I want to leave you with this final, absolutely vital question. Are you prepared to adapt your service model before August 6th to protect your family's future? Now is the time to contact your supports coordinator and make sure your new agreements are signed. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.